America needs to be careful what it teaches to its young people. Hello, my name is Amos Tarfa. I'm the director of Lifestem Academy in Moorhead, Minnesota. And in this video, I want to briefly talk about the dangers of critical theory, critical race theory, and any ideology that is taught to children which will not allow them to flourish in who God has made them to be. There's a man by the name of Vodi Bakum who has written a book called Fault Lines, and he does an excellent job of explaining critical theory, critical race theory. You could Google critical theory and critical race theory and see the definition right away. And then Thomas Sowell in his book Discrimination and Disparities does a great job of showing us that there are other factors that can explain why disparities could exist in a particular population. Vodi Bakum, you might know him, you might not, but he's a pastor and church planter. He's the dean of the School of Divinity at African Christian University in Lusaka, Zambia. He is an American, but he moved to Zambia with his family, and he lives there, helping with the African Christian University. And Vodi Bakum's book talks about a new religion on page 65, which I'm going to open to here. And he does a great job. He talks about the issue of anti-racism and racism. The anti-racist movement has many of the hallmarks of a cult, he says, including staying close enough to the Bible to avoid immediate detection and hiding the fact that it has a new theology and a new glossary of terms that diverge ever so slightly from Christian orthodoxy. This new cult has created a new lexicon that has served as scaffolding to support what has become an entire body of divinity. In the same manner, this body of divinity comes complete with its own cosmology, original sin, which is racism, law, which is anti-racism, gospel, which is the racial reconciliation, and then it has martyrs and priests and means of atonement in reparations, new birth, which is wokeness, liturgy, canon, theologians such as Ibrahim X. Kendi, Crenshaw, D'Angelo, and he has a catechetism, is what Vodi Bakum says here. But Vodi Bakum goes on. I know this is quite controversial of a topic in our culture, but I really want to just emphasize a few things here. Number one, you try to talk about some of these topics and people tell you, hey, you're not an expert. You shouldn't be talking about that. If you're an expert in this field, I actually am concerned because some of the stuff that is happening here is actually all false. And so if you're an expert in a field that has a lot of falsities, then that's a problem, right? Anyway, so here's what he says, a new cosmology. This is a shocker to many people, okay? We do not teach this at our school. I do not believe this, but these are some of the characteristics that Vodi Bakum has highlighted, okay? What I'm saying is we do not believe in white fragility. We do not believe in wokeness and DEI and all of that. We believe that every person is created in the image of God and should be respected, and we should look at who they are as individuals and not look at their ethnicity. See, America, the truth is the truth, even if someone who's saying it doesn't match and check all the boxes. Whenever you bring up the topic about race and ethnicity in America sometimes, people might tell me, they've told me this before, Amos, you were not born here, you don't understand. You don't understand, and you can't try to talk about ethnicity in America. You're not an African American, you're a Nigerian American, or you're a Nigerian. You don't understand. And people say that, and you try to understand, what do you mean by this? Are you saying that I don't understand, and therefore I can't speak to the issue? Because here's the problem. Part of the issue, according to those who believe this, and I'm going to read a little bit about critical theory and all of that, but those who say this, and please, I'm saying this in love, okay? Even if you believe different from me, know that that some of these topics are complicated, and we can't use an experience someone has or a community that, hey, this happened, and I can speak for a fact that people were mean or people were racist in that community. Here's the deal. Before we address any of this, the topic in question, there's a bigger topic, which is the question of worldview. What is the best explanation for the nature of reality that we see today in how people relate to one another, in how nations fight against nations, and so on and so forth? The best explanation, this is where I start, my premise. The best explanation is that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And as we go down in the story, we learn that there was sin that came into the world in Genesis chapter 3 in the Bible. Sin came into the world and it broke a relationship between man and God. God is holy, man is sinful, and therefore man could not be reconciled to God through any work that he could do, and that's why Jesus came. In the Christian framework, as a Christian, I believe that Jesus came, he died, and he rose again. And that is how we get reconciliation with God, is through Jesus Christ from the sacrifice that he did on the cross. The Bible talks about this in 1 Corinthians 15, that because Jesus came back from the dead, there is hope and there's eternal life that we can have in him. Okay, that's important. That's my worldview. That's how I view the world. So when people are mean to one another, I say that it's a sin issue, and that's the explanation I give. Now, some people will say, oh no, there's more to the story than just sin. There's actual pigmentation, and certain people of certain ethnicities have certain concerns or certain problems, and people bring up this. And this is what Vodi Bakum is going to address in this part of the book. But as I've said before, people tell me, oh, Amos, you don't understand. But here's the problem, is that, first of all, Paul does this in the Bible, and he tries to talk about, like in Philippians chapter 3, he talks about how people might try to discredit some of his work. And he just says, basically, for a second, if I could tell you the grounds I have to speak, here, I have some ground to speak. Now, the terminologies that we use, nobody should be tied down to some of these terminologies to the point that it causes you to be upset or mad. Terminologies like African American, I bring that up because people might say, Amos, you're not African American, and as though because I'm not African American, I can't speak about living in America as someone who's considered black, right? They say black. I don't like those terms, but I'm just using that, okay? I don't like those terms, especially in the context of critical theory, critical race theory. That's what I'm trying to get at, especially. Okay, so let's circle back. So I hear things like, oh, Amos, you can't talk about these issues because you were not born here, and so on and so forth. I think that it is really sad how much logic is lacking in our American universities and how much logic is lacking in society. If the logic is that people of certain pigmentation should expect to be treated a certain way and should expect to face different obstacles, if that's the logic, and again, this topic has given rise to 2 books and many other books. So it's not like we could solve it in one podcast, okay? But I just want to explain how what you teach in school is really important, because you can destroy children's lives by the lies that you teach them. And I want to encourage you parents, what are your children learning, right? And this is not just all about, oh, do you want more people to just go to your school? It's not about that. It's about the fact that you are better off homeschooling your kids, having them in a private school that is willing to stand for truth, or just doing something radically different. I don't know, send them to Nigeria or Ghana, somewhere else, than allowing them to be brainwashed with theories that are not true, but that can inhibit how well they do in life. So let me explain the logic I was trying to say. So if the logic is that your pigmentation can affect your how well you do in life and so on, well, how do you explain people who might have my pigmentation who are not facing some of the same problems or some of the same challenges that others who might have the same pigmentation are facing in other settings? Well, here's the deal. I'll give one example. And I know people are like, yeah, that's the talking point that people use and all of that. But here's the key. If you have a family structure with a father and a mother present, that is a factor that can affect the flourishing of the children, right? If the father and mother are present and involved in that child's life, they're married and involved in that child's life, that is a factor that can come into play. Number 2, if a child understands that education is their only way out of a situation that might be a cycle, that helps a lot. And America, let me say this to you with all love and kindness. Your education system, now I am an American, but I say this again, it's just hard for me to say it without ruffling feathers unnecessarily, but I just really have to emphasize this again and again. America, your K-12 education is terrible. It's inefficient, it's sometimes illogical, and it produces people at the end of the 12th grade who don't know what to do with their lives. Your education system is failing people. And it's failing them on a large scale. And so the reason why I wanted to say what I said about, Amos, can you speak about this issue? And do you have any bragging rights? Is I am here to help by God's grace. And I will help any child in any inner city circle, like I'm talking about Baltimore, Chicago, and so on and so forth. Any place where we see these schools that are failing, but students who are, failing math drastically, we are willing to help them. We're willing to give every one of them a chance to flourish in education. But here's the problem, America. We don't value education in this nation. And I'm not talking about it on the level of funding schools. No. I'm saying, how many people take the education of their child seriously enough or more seriously than that of the sporting activities the child does? We as a nation are so driven by entertainment and sports. Johnny could get a C and it's like, oh, okay, what's the big deal? Where I grew up, you get a C, you're in serious trouble, right? Depending on the setting. You get a D or an F, you're in big trouble. You repeat the whole grade if you get an F in math. You repeat the whole 8th grade if you get an F in math, and so on and so forth. 9th grade, you repeat the whole 9th grade. Like the whole year with all the subjects that you did that year when you got the F. America, we can do better. Our school systems are, people argue, well, you don't understand. Some school systems are not well funded. Let me sit here before I answer this one. Have you looked at the school systems in West Africa? Have you looked at schools where people don't even have fans or air conditioning or windows that work properly? And some of those kids are at MIT and Harvard and Yale now, excelling at a very high level. How is that possible? Am I saying that schools shouldn't be funded? Well, they should be funded, but the problem America has is not funding fundamentally. America has a problem with vision. Vision for the student. Do the students have a vision for life? Do the students understand the value of learning and education? Like, we need young people to realize, I need to apply myself to learning well. And the reason why I bring this all up is that, you know what? The issue of race and ethnicity in America, a lot of that can be solved if we also change our mindset as to education. And if you're telling a young person that because of anything about their past, they have any reason not to excel, you are lying to them, and that's just not true. I used this example a few years ago, and people are like, oh, it's not the same, it's not the same. Where I'm from in Nigeria, the northern part of Nigeria, 1 in 2 men or 1 in 2 boys, males, are illiterate. I thank God for the opportunity I had to move south, and then my dad, of course, also valued education. My mom also, and our family valued education. That changed my whole life when I moved to a place where they had a rigorous education program. I know about illiteracy. I know about education challenges firsthand. And when you look at Nigeria's demographic, about 10 million children are on the streets. 10 million children are, well, they're out of school, and a lot of them are on the streets just trying to, survive and make do with day-to-day living. Some of them are trying to sell peanuts to make money to help their families. And I look at those situations, and I know of stories of some of those kids who, when they were taken out of that setting and given an education opportunity, and they took the opportunity, they flourished and they've gone far. Guys, America's problem is not fundamentally funding. We don't have a vision for these kids. Look at middle school in America. The middle school education in America is terrible. It's literally babysitting for 3 years. And that's why some of those kids don't apply themselves to excellence. Again, I say this in love. I'm not mad at anyone. I'm just saying we can't keep doing what we're doing. Look at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Take their curriculum and look at it. And compare it to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in other countries. Compared to 6th, 7th, 8th grade in Nigeria, compared to 6th, 7th, 8th grade in India, compared to 6th, 7th grade in Shanghai, and we could go on and on. These 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are just playing like they're playing. I mean, if you made 6th, 7th, and 8th graders apply themselves to educational excellence, high school in America is going to be very different. What do I mean by this? We teach fractions multiple years in a row in America. We teach decimals multiple years in a row in America. We're teaching these topics over and over again as though we didn't mean it the first time we taught it, right? Number 2, we look at their writing. We look at their English. How well are they paying attention to English and spelling and writing and applying themselves to excellence there? How many hours a day are they studying? Are they spending 3 hours a day studying diligently, or are they just playing games? Guys, We need to rethink our middle school in America. We need to think education as a whole in America and give value to it. Because why are we ranked so low in STEM? Why are we ranked so low in a lot of these fields? We're not applying ourselves to excellence in education. That is our problem. If we apply ourselves to excellence in education, we will see a lot of people flourishing. And so let's wrap this up back to the topic that brought us to this discussion. Critical race theory, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and so on and so forth. Here's the deal. We cannot be playing with these issues. We need to let people know that hard work, now there are opportunities that can present themselves, but those opportunities are not always about race opportunities. Sometimes it's just a status thing, right? If your dad is the CEO of a multi-level, like a multi-corporation, you probably have more opportunities than somebody who is of the same ethnicity as you, who doesn't have a dad who's the CEO of a big corporation. There's multiple factors that can affect success, right? And Thomas Sowell talks about this in his book. But here's the thing, is that hard work is a great tool no matter what. You apply yourself to hard work, read good books. Ben Carson's book does a great job. Think big, right? He talks about talent. Develop your talents well. Honesty. Be honest. Insight. He talks about learning from other people that have come before you. And be nice to people. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. If you're mean to people, that's going to come with problems. K, knowledge. Seek knowledge. Don't just go to school to get good grades, but actually learn well. B is for books. Read good books. Young people should be reading more every day than they play games. They should always read more than they play games. Now, the only other thing I would encourage them to do, other than reading there, if they say, oh, I can't read for 3 hours, that's a long time. Well, they should be engaged in dialogue and conversation with people or serving their communities, not spending 8 hours on smartphones, wasting their lives, right? And so we need to encourage them to read books. We need to have in-depth learning for the other I in Think Big, and then G is for God. We need God to be the center of our education. Unfortunately, that's not happening in many of our public schools, many of our schools. Very, very sad. So a lot of people have a lot to say about this topic, but please know that I'm not speaking about this casually. I am willing to get in the game, to give every child in America a quality education through our online math program. I can't do that, of course, in teaching in all the schools, but I can do that through online math programs that people can use to learn well and to seek to flourish. And we will not allow anyone to have any reason to not apply themselves to excellence. That's the attitude we need to have. Have you ever looked at a basketball coach talking to his team? They don't talk to their team and say things like, hey, Johnny, if you don't want to play well tonight, that's okay. They tell them, go work hard. Let's do this, right? Imagine if we took the same passion and intensity that we use in sports. Imagine if we brought that to education. We really don't value education in this country, especially in the K-12 space. And then in the colleges, we're seeing people doing remedial math in their freshman year of college. America, I know I can't solve all the problems. We can't solve all the problems in one day. But parents, please, can you sit down with your child, look at their plan for life, discuss where are you headed, what are you doing with your life? Let me look at your subjects. What are you learning? You're learning that stuff. What does that have to do with math? What does that have to do with science, right? Watch out for the stuff that is put into curriculum that has no bearing on excellence in learning. Guys, America is already behind, and now we're bringing in things about gender. We're bringing in things about ethnicity and race and telling people about wokeness. Kids need to be learning how to read, write, and do arithmetic, and to do it well. We are behind as a nation. And if we don't wake up, parents, if you don't wake up, your child will not accomplish their potential. They will not go where they need to go in life. I'm sorry again, I seem like I'm upset at the world. I'm just very concerned for the state of education. Let's end with Vodi Bakum. Some people don't know this, but here's part of this whole idea of anti-racism and so on. Okay, Kendi, he talks about Ibrahim X. Kendi and others are operating from a set of definitions that are neither new nor unique. They have been around since the days of the Frankfurt School, and in some cases even earlier. However, today those words, or more specifically the new meanings given to old words, have made their way into mainstream conscience and vocabulary, giving rise to a new religion where, Vodi Bakum says, where many now trust in deceptive words to no avail. That's from Jeremiah 7:8. So let's examine the language and theology of the cult of anti-racism. We begin with its cosmology. In the beginning, on the first day, white people created whiteness. So that's the first thing Vodi Bakum talks about, is this idea of whiteness. A set of normative privileges granted to white-skinned individuals and groups, which is invisible to those who are privileged by it. Critical race theory, the view that the law and legal institutions are inherently racist, and that race itself, instead of being biologically grounded and natural, is a socially constructed concept that is used by white people to further their economic and political interests at the expense of people of color. That's part of what CRT 101 is. Unfortunately, for many, it has also become Christianity 101, and sadly, pointing out the CRT roots is often dismissed as mere name calling. Let's discourage name calling and engage with concepts and concerns. And I get that some people are just going to do name calling and all that. But the reality is, parents, if your child is in a school that buys into any of this, my question is why? Why are you exposing your child to nonsense teaching or things that don't make any sense, right? Especially this issue. It's just not true. And I'll explain a little bit at the end. On the second day, Vodi Bakum says here, white people created white privilege, he says. What is white privilege? A series of unearned advantages that accrue to white people by virtue of their whiteness. On the third day, white people created white supremacy. Any belief, behavior, or system that supports, promotes, or enhances white privilege. On the fourth day, white people created white complicity. White complicity is white people, through the practices of whiteness and by benefiting from white privilege, contribute to the maintenance of systemic racial injustice. On the fifth day, white people created white equilibrium. The white equilibrium is a belief system that allows white people to remain comfortably ignorant. On the sixth day, white people created white fragility. White fragility is the inability and unwillingness of white people to talk about race due to the grip that whiteness, white supremacy, white privilege, white complicity, and white equilibrium exert on them, knowingly or unknowingly. Okay. Vodi Bakum goes on to talk about the original sin. He talks about racism, and there's just so much stuff in this book. Here's the deal. America, you are blessed in more ways than you can imagine. This message that is pushed about wokeness and white fragility and all of this stuff is so broken, and I just wish that some of these people will just go live in Africa or in Nigeria, in my village. Just go live there for a few days. And then come back and tell me about the theories that you've written. Man's problem is not fundamentally a skin color problem. It's a sin problem. People can have prejudice and discrimination against other people, not simply on the basis of skin color, but on other things. And any of those other things, it doesn't make any of it right to discriminate or push anyone based on how they were born, their skin color or their status and how much money they have. None of that is made right in this discussion. What I'm trying to say, though, is that humans have the tendency to segregate people on different criteria, right? You have a club that is only for these people, for these people of this ethnicity. Oh, this club is for only people from Scotland or from Switzerland or whatever. If anyone did any of that, we would say that's a problem. And here we are in broad daylight where people are literally discriminated against because of their skin color. In this case, it has to do with whiteness, right? We are saying that there's only certain people of certain races that can fit here. Well, how does that make sense for people like my wife and I? We have children that will be considered African American. How does that make sense for them? Where do they fit into the puzzle, right? Your ethnicity in America is the least of your worries for several reasons. You can move in America. If you don't like where you live, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying you might be able to move. You might be able to, get into this college or that college. Let me tell you about some of my background. First of all, you can't just move in Nigeria. You can't just move from, I'm in this state, I'm going to move to this state and just get new opportunities. In America, at least there might be some opportunities that you can start with. So you're blessed to be able to move around America more easily. That's a blessing that you wouldn't even understand until you go live in Nigeria. Number two, if race or ethnicities fundamentally is part of the problem, how do you explain disparities amongst people within a same race that are very different? You can meet two people who are of Latino descent, heritage, or who are African American, or who are even white, like the same ethnicity, but they're very different in outcomes, very different. There are other factors that can affect outcomes. We need more fathers in the home. That's a fact. It doesn't matter what a person's ethnicity is. You need more fathers in the home. And our culture, unfortunately, while they have this race thing going on, they also have the gender piece going on at the same time. I don't know how fast you can destroy a nation, but clearly we're trying to do it pretty fast. Not a healthy way to help a nation flourish. How do we help a nation flourish? Let's go back to how humans are supposed to live. And please know that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So if you're watching this saying, are you saying that I'm a sinner because I'm living in this lifestyle and that? I'm saying there's hope in Jesus Christ. There's hope, but I cannot endorse lifestyles that go against God's word. And that's part of what we need to really come to terms with. I understand that this is a heavy pill to swallow on some of these topics, but a lot of good, like Vodi Bakum and some other good teachers have talked about these issues. We need to stop telling people that their ethnicities affect their outcome. We need to stop doing that. Because you give me an illiterate northern Nigerian boy who is willing to learn, and I can give you a medical doctor in not too long of the distant future. An illiterate boy in his teenage years can become a medical doctor. Like, there's no limits in America. These things could not necessarily happen in other places, but in America, I've watched people, talk about Patrick Bet-David, people who came here who had nothing and today are employing hundreds of people. Like, people don't understand how unique America is. And that's why I say go live in another country before you write any book about ethnicity. And then when you say these things, people might say, well, you were born somewhere else, so you can't talk to the issue at hand. Well, according to your logic, if ethnicity matters, then it shouldn't discriminate between people of the same ethnicity. That's a lot to chew on, but we really got to take back our education. We have to take back our education. We have math tools that are available to help any child in any circumstance to flourish. And if your math skills are intact, you have a chance to go further in life. You really do. We have career prep materials we're putting together. I'll be more than willing to share that with anybody in any district in America who says, I just feel like I'm not getting a quality education. We can give you a blueprint to help you get a quality education. America, there's hope only if we are willing to do the hard work, to actually put away some of these theories that are being taught and focus on actually learning math, science, English, history, and learning them well. That's where our hope lies. And of course, fundamentally, having the worldview that explains all of this, which is, I believe, the Bible explains the fundamentals for why we're here and what the meaning of life is. There's a lot more we can talk about. This book is excellent. You can listen to Vodi Bakum's talk. But I just want to encourage you to be careful. I can't speak to everything on the topic, but I just want to bring it up again. Do not, I know some people are going to write comments about A, B, C, D, and this. Don't just spill it out there. Read Vodi Bakum's book. Read Thomas Sowell's book. And then let's have a conversation. Be willing to learn and have a conversation. I'm willing to have conversations about challenges people have had, but I will tell you that we cannot come up with a system to try and package everything with this assumption, that America is this or America is that. America is racist. That's all nonsense. America is not racist as a nation. Nope, not at all. Is it perfect? No, but it's doing a pretty good job. Go to some countries that I'm familiar with where you literally can never become a thing because of your caste or where you're born or whatever. Those things exist, and people from those cultures can speak to it. I'm not of that heritage, but in Nigeria, I can tell you that you are not guaranteed success. Not at all. You are not guaranteed success. Sometimes simply just where you're born can affect your success in Nigeria, and the opportunities you have can be limited. Now, Nigeria is a wonderful place, don't get me wrong. Every country has its challenges, but I just bring that up to you to say, before you complain about America, just look at other countries, and I think you might be more grateful for what you have.